treat high errors, 9, 10 diopters, but what about the induced corneal aberrations, the quality of the patient's vision? Does that get affected with LASIK? Is phakic IOL a better alternative in that respect? Again, in the presbyopic age group, can we still go ahead with the phakic IOL, or is lens surgery a better option? Again, in hypermetropia, what would give the best or safest results? If we say lens surgery, is the biometry bang on in such cases then? In the presence of ocular comorbidities, how would that affect our decision making? So broadly, the options that we have at hand are corneal laser procedures, phakic IOLs, and refractive lens surgery. What I've not mentioned here are, the first option is we can probably not do anything, leave the patient alone, or a combination of these if the error is that high. So we're going to cover each one of these in detail, and then at the end of it have a case discussion and see which of these would suit what patient profile. So the decision making would rest on the patient's age, the magnitude of the error, anatomical considerations like we'll see further, some technical issues, and surgeon preference. So I think I'm going to start off by discussing phakic IOLs. As we all know, phakic IOLs are mainly used to, they're a good alternative to treat high refractive errors. That's primarily because LASIK in treating high refractive errors can be a little bit unpredictable. It can show regression over time. There is always the risk of ectasia, and it induces higher order aberrations, so it can affect the quality of vision. So this is just the quality of vision analysis post-operative in a case of LASIK. The error treated was 7.5 sphere and a 2 diopter cylinder. We can see a decent point spread function and acceptable scatter index, but the lower picture is how it would appear to the patient after LASIK. The vision is good, but this scan is showing us the split up of the aberrations, the total aberrations, the corneal, and the internal optics. So we can see that the induced corneal aberrations are quite high. The main culprit usually is the spherical aberration, which normally is about 0.26. Here we can see it's almost 3 times normal. So the corneal asphericity is quite changed. Here you see the point spread function of the internal optics versus what is induced by the cornea. So that usually translates to night vision disturbances, the quality of vision. This is how a point street light would appear to a patient with high spherical aberration. This is if the coma were to be specifically high. This is how if the trefoil was high. But usually after LASIK is done for high refractive errors, there can be a combination of all these. So in that respect, maybe phakic IOLs do provide a good alternative. They have better predictability, stability, reversibility potentially, preserve accommodation compared to a refractive lens surgery, and also the cornea tear film is less effective as compared to LASIK. So broadly, there are 3 types of phakic implants available. There are angle-supported lenses, iris-fixated lenses, and sulcus-supported. As of now, only 2 are FDA approved. One is the Vericel and the ICL. So starting with the Acrysoft Cachet that was introduced, it's a single-piece foldable acrylic lens. As you can see in the second picture here, the side profile shows a good wall so that it's away from the iris. It won't cause pupillary block, as well as it maintains its distance from the cornea. There are 4 sizes available depending on the angle-to-angle measurement that we measure pre-op, and it's usually used to treat errors from -6 to -16.5 diopters. So the calculation requires us to enter the angle-to-angle distance, the anterior chamber depth, a minimum of 3.2 millimeters will be required, and as you can see that the maximum cylindrical power that we can enter is about -2. That's because a toric version is not available, nor is a hyperopic treatment available for this. This is just a small video of Cachet that we have used. Just the lens is being placed in the cartridge, a gentle push to the tip of the cartridge. The rest of the procedure after that is pretty simple, just side ports. As you can see, the pupil is constricted, the main wound entry, and the IOL is the phakic IOL is implanted, injected into the anterior chamber gently. It has compressible haptics so that they won't, exert compressive forces in the angle, and a good wall. So peripheral iridotomy is not recommended by the company, as you can see here, but I think now it's withdrawn because of concern issues avoiding the endothelial loss long term. The next option is the iris claw lens, the Vericide that is used widely in basically European countries. It's popularly known as the artisan lens. It's a rigid PMMA lens. It can correct errors to up to -23. The hyperopic version up to +12 and a toric version is also available. But the Veriflex, which is a foldable variety, is being introduced and being used now. What we most commonly use is the ICL, the implantable Collamer lens, which is a single piece made up of biocompatible polymer Collamer. It's a plate haptic lens intended for sulcus implantation. So there are 5 sizes available. I'll just be touching upon how we decide on the size of the ICL. The one available now is Toric BSS. The powers range up to myopia -18. A -18 can correct almost up to -20 dark present myopia. The hyperopic version is available, and so is a toric. So this is a small video. The ICL being done in a patient of the central cone stable keratoconus post-intact. The loading is, I think, an important part of the procedure. Once the loading is, I think we get a good grasp over the loading. The rest of the procedure comes easy to an anterior segment surgeon. The side port at 3.2 main bone. The pupil is dilated. The ICL is gently injected into the anterior chamber. Here we see the haptics are gently being tucked behind the iris into the sulcus. Even though the intacts may obscure the view a bit, the procedure is, I think, being done quite easily. After the ICL is, the central optic is like the no-touch zone. Pilocarpine is being injected and a surgical PI is being done. But now the latest versions that we are using, the V4C, doesn't require a PI. That's because there's a central aqua port in the center of the ICL that will allow more physiological flow of aqueous, and it will kind of help nourish the natural crystalline lens, and it would also help prevent pupillary blocks, so the company doesn't recommend an iridotomy in these lenses. Broadly, the indications for phakic IOLs are when LASIK is contraindicated, either because of the magnitude of the refractive error or the corneal thickness, or for any other reason. The prerequisites, the refraction needs to be stable. There's a recommended age group. Maybe it can be done a little bit earlier if the refraction is stable and there's anisometropia. Usually, ocular pathology is preferably, we avoid phakic IOLs in these cases. There are specific criteria for the minimum anterior chamber depth, endothelial count, the pupil size, and the angular rate. The anterior chamber depth is not just an important inclusion criteria, but it also plays vital role in sizing. So it's measured in almost all cases of phakic IOLs. You can get a value either on the OP scan, which will give you the anterior chamber depth from the endothelium, or the IOL master will provide a depth from the epithelium. So you have to subtract the corneal thickness in this case, or we can measure it using the UVM or the anterior segment OCT. It's a good idea to probably get imaging done before planning a phakic IOL so that we can study the iris configuration, rule out any pathology, any cysts associated, so that we don't end up in surprises after the surgery. Other than the anterior chamber, the second important factor is the anterior chamber diameter in cases of an anterior chamber phakic IOL, where the angle to angle distance could be required. In iris fixated IOLs, that is not necessary because one size fits all, whereas in the ICL, it rests in the sulcus, so the sulcus to sulcus distance should be measured. But here I'll start with one at a time. The anterior segment OCT, easily we can measure the angle to angle distance. Whereas for the ICL, though we need the sulcus to sulcus, it is not as easily amenable to measurement. It's not directly measurable, so the only equipment that can give us an idea is the UVM, but that is also quite a subjective test. It's highly operator dependent. What usually the calculator would ask for is the white-to-white distance, which can be acquired through the OP scan or the calipers or the IOL master. So usually we assume a consistent relationship between the white-to-white and the sulcus to sulcus. That may be true in Caucasian eyes, but there are different patterns. The relationship may vary. Like the second picture shows an A pattern where the sulcus may be slightly wider as compared to the white-to-white distance. This is true in Orientals, and so a lens touch would more commonly be found in such a population. Whereas in Asians, in whatever cases we've done, usually sulcus tends to be a little bit narrower than the measure of eye-to-eye distance. So in our population, a high vault is not that uncommon, but a lens touch is quite rare. So the main concern with using ICLs is the appropriate sizing. If it's a high vault, it can result in a pupillary block, angle closure glaucoma, whereas if there's a low vault, it can cause a lens touch with anterior subcapsular cataracts. We have now technology, there's software incorporated with the UPM, with the ASOCT, where before the surgery itself, it can predict the post-operative vault, the post-operative ACD, depending on what size ICL we choose. So this is the UPM Compact Touch ICL simulator. We studied about 40 eyes, and we got there was good agreement in what was predicted before the surgery and what we obtained after the surgery. There was just a difference of about 0.02 millimeters in the measured predicted ACD and about 0.06 millimeters in the measured vault. So this is good technology available with us now. These are our ICL results. 60% was 6.6 at the final follow-up, whereas almost 100% were better than 6.12. There was no eye lost, any corrected there was no loss of CDVA. In fact, 60% gained a line and 20% gained 2 lines. This is the graph showing the attempted versus the achieved spherical equivalent of refraction. We can see it's pretty much within the acceptable limits. There's probably one outlier here, minus 1.5 remaining, because I think the error was about minus 21.5. That's how much it can correct. The spherical equivalent of refractive accuracy, you see that 80% were within the intended 0.5 diopters of MRSC, while within 1 diopter, 95% lied within those limits. This is the intended refractive cylinder after surgery. 100% were within 1 diopter of refractive astigmatism. And here in the last graph, we can see that the refraction is maintained at the last follow-up. So I think the complications, yes, their high vault can be an issue. Also, pupillary block can be a concern. It may require a laser peripheral iridotomy after the procedure. Lens opacities, visually significant, not that many, but these are potential complications. With angle-supported lenses, endothelial loss remains the main concern, whereas with iris fixated, I think the enclavation where the iris is held, decentration, slipping, endothelial loss, inflammation, these are all concerns. But to sum up, I think phakic IOLs definitely have a wow factor. The surgery is relatively simple, it's not technically very challenging. It gives good results. I think the only concern